Okay, hello again, everybody. Thank you for joining us today as we conclude May's Improving Talk series, Integrating AI for Tomorrow's Success with a Bang. My name is Armando Lopez, and I am a talent management specialist out of the Improving Mexico Enterprise, and I am very thrilled to welcome you today. Joining me as well is my co-producer in crime, Lynn Barrett, our amazing director from the Dallas Enterprise. But now, let's talk a little bit about the man of the hour, our very cool host, Kevin Jourdain. He's an experienced and solution-driven professional with strong experience as an executive account manager. Kevin leads cross-functional teams across multiple core areas of expertise at Improving: data engineering, modern application development, mobile development, platform engineering, and agile training. In his free time, Kevin likes to play chess and build AI solutions. He also loves spending time creating video games with his daughters and attending a lot of sports events. Lynn, would you tell us a little bit about what we're going to hear today from him?
I sure will. And I didn't know Kevin had spare time, but that's good to hear. Well, Armando, we are thrilled to welcome Kevin today with this webinar of humans, agents, time, and tools. And as we all know, we are in a world where AI is no longer a concept of the future, but a force reshaping the present. Kevin steps into the conversation with the challenge. Are we adapting fast enough? As technical director at Improving in Atlanta, Kevin doesn't just observe the evolution of work, he engineers it. And today, he'll take us to the front lines of human-agent collaboration, where intelligent systems aren't replacing us, they're redefining how we think, decide, and create. If you're ready to rethink productivity, question the boundaries of automation, and explore what it really means to work alongside machines, this is a session you've been waiting for. So before we start, we encourage you to use our Q&A feature so that you can ask Kevin any questions that you might have as he's giving his presentation. So Kevin, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Lynn. Thank you, Armando. Wow, what a incredible introduction. Hopefully this presentation will deliver and match your expectations. Today, we're going to talk about humans, agents, times, and tools, how agents are going to be redefining the workspace in the near future. Before we dive into this, a little bit more about myself, as Lynn and Armando so eloquently presented. Just more personal slide. I am a husband, a father of 3 girls. I love artificial intelligence, data, and analytics. In my spare time, yes, primarily vicariously through my children, I watch a lot of soccer, and when I can, rugby, as it's been a very important sport in my life. And since I've lived in the country for about half my life now, I finally got around to love football, as in the American handball thing, you know. I am born and raised in France, and so hence my incline to speak French, and I have lived in the US since 2001. If you would like to connect with me, feel free to pull out your phone and scan my QR code. All right, what are we going to talk about today? A little bit of the structure of the presentation. We'll go back in history. We will talk about agents, as it is the prevalent and important topic of today, and how we can sort of think of a playbook down the road. So speaking of history, let's just start with one of my favorite human beings, and that is Katherine Johnson. She was known to be a human computer. She successfully calculated trajectories for points of entries with John Glenn going to space in 1962. And she did it all by hand. And so why am I talking about Katherine as a important topic? Well, what I'm going to go over is how humans over time have lived through these waves of abstractions, right? and all the way to where we are today. Sort of a revisit of the past to how it's really defining and explaining what's happening today and what we're seeing, and how really the pattern has already been seen and observed, and it's a matter of how we can gear ourselves and train up so that we can adapt to the new world. As Mark Twain used to say, time is, it doesn't repeat, but it rhymes. And that's very much the case here. So in the case of Katherine Johnson, she was part of an army of human calculators, and they were doing a lot of computations by hand. And eventually, in the early 60s, were replaced by computers. It didn't mean that her job became useless. It meant that actually Katherine Johnson was an integral part of building the software so that these computers calculated appropriately the computing necessary for space exploration. The next wave of abstraction were mainframes that provide a centralized compute. So IBM System 360, but powerful, but shared in computing and glass rooms. And the abstraction to remember here is that all of a sudden we had a centralized piece or large amount of compute that couldn't have been done before. Yet another wave, incepted by Bill Gates and Paul Allen, who had a vision to put a computer on every desk at home. And that completely shifted power to individual knowledge workers. The emergence of internet and APIs in the late 1900s, early 2000s, really allowed for now applications to be talking to one another, and therefore abstracting the location or vendor boundaries that we had experienced thus far. In the 2010s, the explosion of cloud and SaaS abstract hardware, right? Incepted by the vision of Salesforce in 1999, where the goal was to end software. It became more prevalent in the 2010s, where it started popularizing the renting of software and infrastructure as a utility. And last but not least, 2020s. What happened in November 2022? Whether you're in tech or not, I think more or less a majority of us have been sort of heard that weird acronym, or is it a name? Is it a product? ChatGPT. It's not quite a verb because it doesn't sound really just flowy, right? I ChatGPT'd it, but it certainly is transformed the way we see things. And now, while this product, this technology was a result of what really transpired from early research out of Google DeepMind in 2017 with a paper name was running out. Is all you need. I digress. But from that paper started an iterations of technologies for what is now becoming understood generative AI. Attention is all you need. That's the name of the paper. And so now we're facing this future that's sort of scary. And what is it going to look like? Well, one keynote, particularly this year, that happened at CES, where Jensen Huang, the CEO of NVIDIA, had this one slide that I felt was very, very powerful. And that is to summarize what has been the definition of AI thus far, which is speech recognition, image recognition, medical imaging, and other kinds. What he can categorize that as perception AI, this idea of perceivably imitate what a human can do from one particular trait, right? Speech recognition is this idea of recognizing the natural language, but not really putting some sorts of thoughts behind it, right? Image recognition is just this idea of, hey, is this a dog or is this a cat? I don't know. And so how do you distinguish one from the other? And all of these machine learning models and deep learning models led up to what he categorized that. And I thought it was a beautiful way to put it: perception AI. I hinted on it earlier. I talked about generative AI, which exploded since the late 22, and it's just been a crazy wild ride ever since, is this idea of content generation, right? So you can not only understand a wide variety of text, but now you can even understand images and interpret images, interpret videos and audio. But also on the flip side, not only you can understand it and ingest it from an input standpoint, you can also output just as much, because from a prompt, you can actually create a video now. Have you heard of Veo 3 from Google? It's incredible the amount of videos that are being incepted just from that. And so you're generating all kinds of content that has never been done before. So it's sort of like where we are here today. And as of earlier this year, I think we started entering this phase of agentic AI. And I think that this is why I wanted to bring this up, because we are at the beginning of a wave that is going to redefine how you and I are working. Simply put, I'm convinced of it. And so how do we engage with agents in a way that it promotes betterment of a company without creating this fear of, is my job going to be replaced? I'm going to touch on that later on. Hopefully, some of these words will sort of appease your mind. Last but not least is physical AI. I think that we're already seeing some of it, right? Robo taxis and the emergence of robots inside manufacturing. That's not really a new concept. It's just becoming more and more mainstream. That's what I think. What Jason was mentioning is that some of these things, much like Bill Gates had a vision to put a desktop on in every home, I think that we're going to see more and more robotics, probably in our day-to-day lives, in our at our homes. But we're a little bit away from that. I would give it a couple of years, although I'm not really good at playing with a crystal ball these days when it comes to AI. So take it with a grain of salt. For now, let's focus on agents. So what are agents? What are they? The here AI agents. Agents do this, do that. Is it the agent from the Matrix? Not quite. No, an agent is, simply put, it has a goal. It can repeat itself and do that goal pretty well. And sometimes you can arm it with tools to be very effective. And so that's essentially what this is. It's an entity with a very specific goal that interface directly with an LLM and does a particular task well, provided that you give it some tools. That's simply what it is. And I'll give you some examples with, I'll touch on a case study there, in there shortly, of what we've done in the past, how agents were very useful and very impactful. As LLMs are getting better, not only those agents can execute tasks pretty well, right? Think of it as your junior person, very, very entry-level junior coworker that can do this all day long. But now the LLMs are getting better because there's a reasoning capability. There's a chain of thoughts that can be done. And so you can have low-level sets of agents that can just execute the task. Now you can start introducing another layer of agents that are more your reasoners, your planners, similar to a hierarchy that you can think of in all corporations with your your frontline workers and your managers and directors, and it sort of have this same sense of structure. The caveat has been that when you start introducing multi-layer agents, the outcome of it were meh. But it's only as bad as it is today. It's only going to get better. And so it's our job, Improving's job, to ensure that is keeping up with the cutting edge technology and know when to start introducing that technology to effectively solve problems. What are some of the frameworks that we use that are popular? I would say these are the main three. LangGraph, Creo AI, and Pydantic AI are probably the most important frameworks to successfully implement agents. And while this is all sort of nerdy talk, think of it as just a way to structure your software that can accelerate your development of agents. And these are three fundamental frameworks that are pretty popular. They can automate tasks, but they don't automate whole jobs, right? Contrary to what you may think, the agents do not have the capability of doing human work. Some will say yet, some will say, well, at some point they will. Certainly, there's certain jobs eventually that over time might disappear because the sum of tasks that are incorporated and comprised in a particular job set might be all automated. But then this gives an opportunity for that person to turn around and either be a boss of these agents that we'll talk about in a minute, or new kinds of opportunities. And so as a principle, I just think that agents can do automations of tasks pretty well, but not jobs. The other piece that is worth thinking about is, and I mentioned it, is this human supervision, right? If we let those agents loose and never check in what they're actually doing, well, of course, the outcome would probably be terrible if there's no sorts of supervision. And so then there's this idea of symbiosis, of synchronicity between agents and humans that I think is going to become a skill to be able to say, hey, I'm just keeping up with my agents, just like I could keep up with other colleagues. And so I think that this is where we can see a lot of success is that how do we sort of identify sort of tasks that can be done effectively by agents, and then allow for the human to think critically and think at a higher level to do jobs that are more meaningful to the organization. Current early wins these days, what are agents good for at this point is retrieval and workflows. So speaking of retrieval and workflow, one great case study that I can mention is that we worked with a client that wanted to look for informations that are financial or informations publicly available. They had a business development team that every single day went out and looked through a series of websites that they had well identified, or looking at the news that they were going to look and see if this could be applicable to their organization. So you got to think about their day-to-day, right? So these people were going to look at websites, reading articles every single day. And once they identified that this article could actually be worth keeping up with as a potential lead for their business, then they started tracking these leads in Excel. Long story short, we came in, Improving came in, and proposed an agentic solution to solve just that. And by that, we used one of these three frameworks to create agents that had very specific lens of where to look online. So these agents were armed with and I'll hit on it in a minute when you talk to tools, but they were armed with a capability of doing Google searches, and then because they were LLM based agents, right? They could actually understand text, and so if they looked at the client's mission and ensure that this article was relevant to even be thought of as something that we should be brought in. Because there's that aspect of human brain, right? That where you read something and then you're like, hey, do I need to bring this in? Is this something that is worth bringing in? Is this applicable to my company? And so the agents are doing that every day. Every single day they're doing that. So they're bringing a wave of articles, a wave of information inside an application that we built. And instead of using Excel, then they start using this application because it is now crawled, scraped, and then mapped to their application so that they can keep up with it. All to say that fast forward, we launched it just about a month and a half ago, and already this solution has uncovered $14 billion in potential leads. That is incredible success compared to what this human team were able to analyze up to $1 billion of leads. And that's only because they were not reading and analyzing articles every single day because they had so many other tasks that needed to be done. As a result, were these people let go? Absolutely not. These people were augmented with this solution, and it sort of redefined their job to have a better meaning for their organization, to do things that are closer to the sales team and say, hey, I have a high level of confidence that this is a strong lead. You should pursue it. Talk about incredible return on investment, right? And so these are the kinds of examples that we see day in, day out, as far as building agentic solutions that could really make an impact for your organization. And we'll talk about how we sort of identify potentially these problems. So let's dive into it. And let's dive into it with one of my favorite podcasts. This is just a personal preference. I love me some Lex Fridman. He's a bright person. And in episode 419, I'm going to quote what Sam Altman said. And that is, I'm seeing some, okay. He said, it was a long conversation. If you've ever listened to Lex Fridman's podcast, those are usually about 3 to 4 hours. But some of the things that Sam said that I thought was so important. If you think of all the 5-second tasks in the economy, 5-minute tasks, 5-hour tasks, maybe even 5-day tasks, how many of those can the AI do? So this episode was last year, and at the time, we were sort of flirting with this idea of agents, but technology wasn't really there. The frameworks were not really promoting good solutions, and now the story is different, because I think that the frameworks and the ones that I mentioned are incredible, and we can start integrating with the AI in ways to build agents and establish workflows that are very meaningful and impactful, much like the case study that I just mentioned. If we sort of put it on this horizontal line, right, is what are sorts of existing tasks that humans do, right, on a day-to-day basis, and that maybe some agents could do it because it will be worth spending the R&D money to invest in and turn around and see what the impact could be. So, 5 seconds. What are 5-second tasks? Well, triaging emails, right? 5-minute task, summaries or drafting a paper, right? 5-hour could be making an analysis for of some financial analysis, creating a small prototype. And of course, prototypes could vary. It could be 5 hours, could be 5 days, could be 10 days. But these are just examples. You can create a small prototype in 5 hours these days, right? Strategic planning research. How many of those research were compressed by tools like, I'm already hinting on tools, and that's my next slide, but tools like Perplexity or deep research, right? Some of these tools are so impactful, and you realize, and you just do a few prompts, and you're like, oh my gosh, this did this entire research for me, something that would have taken me 5 days, right? And so what else? What else can we thinking about? And so this will be sort of the theme for the call of action at the end of this presentation is, what other tasks that you can think of that perhaps agent could be doing so that it reclaims your hour and allows you for deeper thinking, right? So tools. They're different landscapes, right? If you think of tools for enterprises, you've got evidently Copilot, right? You've got OpenAI, which have their own enterprise version. You've got Google Gemini, and also worth noting, Anthropic Claude. Those 4 are probably your main enterprise leaders. There are other companies like Glean, and some companies that can build those RAG systems that started from a small startup and grew out to be massive. So there are other examples, but those are the more prevalent ones, and those can have huge impact in your day-to-day life. And I think we've covered many of what it can do in prior presentation. I encourage you guys to go check out our YouTube channel and go look at some of the things that we've talked about regarding specifically these technologies. What about for builders? For the nerd like me that like to, on my spare time, build AI solutions? Yep, that's what I do. But what about for software engineers just in general? So you've got tools like Cursor or Windsurf. This is the new logo, by the way. You've got GitHub Copilot, right? These tools that have AI augmented capabilities, they are IDEs that can dramatically increase your throughput because through a few prompts, you can build code, right? And so these are some of the tools that can significantly make a dent into your productivity in a positive way, provided that you know how to use them. Yes, of course. And last but not least, agents, which is what we're here to talk about mainly. In Devlin's presentation, when he talked about successful AR architecture, and he mentioned the MCP versus A2A. Well, just to sort of, if you haven't seen that presentation, I recommend that you guys go check it out. It was the one from earlier this month. But just as a quick summary, what is MCP that you see here? Model Context Protocol. It's a protocol that was incepted by Anthropic which I mentioned earlier. And the purpose of it is this. It is allowing to take an AI agent and integrate it with a tool in a ways that through natural language, it can integrate through. So it's a tool calling protocol. And so with that being said, it allows for a better power for your agents to where they can now do all kinds of awesome things. I talked about Zerper earlier, right? This idea of being able to search through Google. Well, Zerper is a tool that you can augment your agent with, and to say, hey, I want you to do just this. And so through MCP, you can basically call a tool like Zerper, and then your agent is going to do the task that you're asking it to do. You can also use Figma MCP, which if you integrate this in your day-to-day software delivery lifecycle, you can then build your Figma and say, hey, you see this Figma over here? Go ahead and do that, and then start implement it. And what does this mean? Does this mean that you don't have to do a job as a software engineer? No, that doesn't mean that at all. That just simply means that you don't have to do those things that were mundane and took forever. You can do more abstract thinking and deeper thinking to create even more complex solutions. That's what this means, right? So MCP are ways to call tools for your agents. And A2A is a protocol that was introduced by Google, I want to say late last year or earlier this year. And this is just simply to, yet again, we talked about abstraction layer earlier, right? Is to allow agents to become this new wave of abstractions for the interfaces that you have available. And the ones that are the common interfaces that we can think of is RPIs, right? And so if you think of an agent that sits on top of ServiceNow have an agent that is belong to the A2A protocols. And so you can now all of a sudden start asking questions to your agent, directly interfacing with ServiceNow's ticketing system, and gathering the information that you want to then talk to another agent and do something else. And while this is still super early in I guess it's still super early, that we are going to see, I think, a increase of A2A agents that are going to become the new interface of companies. And luckily, this is something that we focus on is how do we, as improving, focus on building the things that keep you at the edge of technology. And we're here to partner with you on that. So speaking of partnering, let's talk about our consulting playbook. What are some of the things that we can think of? What playbook can we think of that can lead us to build agentic solutions that will save you time? And it starts with identifying toil tasks and size the return on investment. Toil tasks are, think of it as manual tasks, repetitive tasks, cumbersome tasks, right? So what kind of tasks that you do on a day in, day out, whether they take 5 seconds, maybe not, 5 minutes, maybe 5 hours, perhaps, or 5-day tasks, and can they be automated by AI agents, right? Can those become less of a human thing, more of an agent thing? And then you prototype it narrow, meaning that you don't want to go too deep into trying to solve the world's problem. Take the task, understand what it is, and then put some words as to how we could prototype it. Okay. You can also think about some KPIs that would measure that impact so that you can really identify what your return on investment is going to be. And then you have to upskill your teams, right? So if you are, let's just take the example of the case study that we're talking about with the business development team, right? We had to upskill them into understanding what this new application was about, but it sort of redefined their work. They were managers of agents. They are managers of agents. What does that mean for them? And other types of upskilling is also understanding of the upkeep, right? How do you make sure on the technology side that your agents are doing the right thing? So we did a knowledge transfer with their development team and say, hey, by the way, this is how it works. Integrate into existing workflows. Evidently, the tasks that you identified over here are going to be part of workflows that are prevalent in your organization. And so the key piece will be to integrate them back into what you do day in, day out. And you iterate through. Iterate, get feedbacks. Off you go. And finally, last but not least, scale responsibly with good governance. And as far as governance is concerned, the one principle that I will say, and I hinted on it earlier, is human in the loop. Keep the human in the loop. When is, up to your organization, but I can say that it's not too long. Don't wait a year before looking at what an agent or an army of agents has done. Last but not least, call to action. So if you are interested into identifying what agents could do successfully for you, start with one high impact task. Then if you want to do it yourself, deploy agents and see and track the metrics. Then with this new free time, supersede it with strategic work. Share the wins, expand the adoption, keep humans in charge, because at the end of the day, we are setting the goals, we are setting the roadmap, and help shape the next abstraction layer. And that is it for me for today. Hopefully you've walked away with something. And if you have any questions, please let me know. Lynn, Armando?
Yeah, we do have some questions. And first of all, thank you so much. I function as a scrum master in the product side, and we always hear like jobs are going away, like you said, humans are out of the loop. I find now that we have more time for our teams to do the real work, because we're using AI to, we can ideate on a board, take all those ideas, throw them into AI and think about what themes do we see? How do we plan? What would be the order of these things? So it's been great. And it's really kind of exciting to see how we can kind of look like new shiny stars out there going, wow, how do they know how to plan like that? So lots of good stuff. And thank you for mentioning Katherine Johnson, one of my heroes as well. Awesome. So we do have a few questions. Let me throw a few of them at you now. First one is, A to A reminds me a lot of the if then. Sorry, I can't talk. If then. This, then, that.
Yeah.
Do you see similar ways of coordinating agents?
So there are some similarities, but I will say that the particularity of the agents A to A protocol is simply this idea of introducing chain of thought combined with natural language to be a really compelling solution to do tasks that we've never done before. The if then is and then that is super deterministic, and this idea of LLM, which foundationally is a probabilistic entity, and so there's a sense of, if you hear probability, you hear It could be this or could be that, but that's what we do as humans every single day. And the problem of deterministic solutions is that they're just too narrow, right? And so this idea of A2A is a protocol that allows for new approach, new ways of integrating, because of the fact that foundationally it is probabilistic, but it also is leveraging large language models and AIs that are keep becoming better and better by the week, right? Every single week we see new agents, and it makes this new protocol even stronger and even better.
Right. Yep. No, don't go on vacation. It'll all change by the time you get back.
Yeah.
So. All right. Next question. So where do you find the most value? You were talking about 5-second tasks, 5-minute tasks, 5-hour tasks. So easing the many of the 5-second tasks or attacking fewer of the longer tasks?
That's a great question. I think that there's probably a line in the sand somewhere, but because we're at the beginning of this wave of agents, I would say E, all of the above. Um, Maybe less on the 5-second tasks because they don't necessarily surmount to something meaningful. But 5-minute task, like let's just say you have you're a SaaS company and you have a bunch of software engineers that need to every single week create spend 5 minutes to write their summary about the week. Well, over the year, that amounts to about 17 hours if you have about 200 employees that are doing that. So it could have an impact and it could be meaningful. What I would be interested in is whether there's a possibility on the flip side of that question to take a 5-hour task or a 5-day task that can be compressed to 30 seconds. And that could be very interesting. The example that I mentioned about perplexity is super prevalent, right? It basically made this ability to spend so much time on doing some research to get an answer in such little time, very much the kinds of compression that we're thinking about here, right? Because doing deep research and analysis on a company, on a new client or whatever, these tools like deep research with Gemini or with OpenAI or with Perplexity can give you a look through the web in so many different ways, pull 60 plus articles, and then condense that into an 11-page document. Yeah, it would take you at least 5 days for you to do this if you were to do this manually. And now this time is compressed. And so what are the kinds of tasks that you are doing that could be compressed because it takes a lot of reading and analysis and measuring numbers and whatever, and that get compressed down to just a few seconds. So it's E, all of the above.
And I think you said something earlier about the fact that there's mundane tasks that you might do all the time. So maybe, attack the ones that might free up your time to do more interesting things that you'd like to do as well, right? So, well, cool. Couple more. How do we keep trust high? Is improving, we're all about trust, right?
Yeah.
How do we keep trust high when agents make low-level decisions?
Wow. Another great question. Number one, human in the loop. It is how you keep the trust. And I touched on it earlier in the presentation. You've got to keep the human in the loop. You cannot leave these agent free, roaming around doing their thing. They have bad tendencies. We heard many times of, they hallucinate, blah, blah, blah. Sure. There's ways to address hallucinations in a pretty significant way, which is my second bullet point. But you've got to keep a human in the loop to make sure that the outcome of these agents don't go haywire. The guardrails is another way to address the possible hallucinations. Think of it as instructions that you tell an AI how to behave within a particular context, And usually, if you build good guardrails, good system prompts, you're going to have some good output and good outcomes. But again, always keep the human in the loop to make sure that it does what it's intended. And the last bullet point that I probably mentioned is transparent logging. Make sure that you can put in place some good logging that's easy to get to so that you can verify what the agent outputted. And don't put that in a black box and say, oh, I trust what it's going to do. No, this, this old saying, trust but verify, pretty true here.
All right. Good information. I like the human in the loop. We have a couple more. Is time saved the only key factor in identifying the ROI of an agent?
No. I mean, it's very important metric. This is something that the one dimension that every single one of us on this planet are bound by is time. Yes. Yeah. But go back to the example that I mentioned earlier with the case study. They were able to significantly increase the level of exposure of identifying leads by a greater scale because they have an army of agents doing the work day in, day out. And they went from 1 billion of observed leads to 14 billion. I mean, that has a direct impact to your top line as well.
Yeah, definitely. All right. I have one more question. Talking about human in the loop, which human skills do you feel rise in value once agents handle routine work?
Great question. The one that comes to mind is this ability to be thinking in system thinking, for lack of a better term. This ability of understanding how a system should operate, knowing that you have agents that are doing things, and now you need to sort of coordinate them. The other skill that's super important is critical thinking. You've heard it at school when we were super young, right? Back in the old school days. Oh, yeah. Critical thinking is so essential to this because you now have to think what your new value prop is as an employee, and critical thinking is a great skill to have to manage agents. And last but not least is narrative synthesis. So think about all of the outputs that are likely going to be text bound. And so how are you going to take all of that narrative and synthesize it in a way that you can effectively present it to your stakeholders? Mm-hmm. That's going to be key as well.
That's a great answer, because I know that's something we deal with all the time, is that tech to business liaison that says this is AI, this is how we interpret it. So great talk today. Thank you so much. I learned a lot and had a good time too. So Armando, why don't you take us home?
Well, then, it was very fun. Congratulations on such a great session to our host, Kevin Jourdain. That's all for today. To our audience, we want to thank you all for joining us during this month for our amazing Integrating AI for Tomorrow's Success series. It's been a blast. Special thanks to our incredible May hosts for such a great job. And coming up next week, from skeptic to pro, building trust in AI with Daniel Scheffler on Wednesday, June 4th. Same time, same place. Until next time, everyone, have a great rest of your day. Thank you again, Kevin. And thank you, Len.